Welcome back to another episode of Gear There and Everywhere. My name is Dom, and as usual, I'm joined by my co-hosts Paul, Ryan, and Sam. But also, we're joined by the legendary Michael Sokol, Perry Stanley, Ethan Alexanian, Liam Gillespie, and Grant Gerlach, my partner in crime.
Ooh.
Guys, want to go around the room, kind of introduce yourselves? Mike, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll be quick because I've been on one of these episodes, thankfully. But I'm Mike Sokol. I have a Beatles cover channel, and I am honored to be with you folks again. You are some of my favorite people.
Very kind words.
I said some of my favorite.
Oh, okay.
My favorite.
All right.
Small fraction. I was kidding.
All right, how about Perry? You want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Perry Stanley, and on my YouTube channel, I discuss the vintage equipment of the Beatles or the various guitars and amps, and sometimes recording as well.
Liam?
I'm just taking in the background. It looks like it's like a Doctor Who episode or something. It's amazing.
Hey folks, I'm Liam Gillespie, and I moderate the Beatles History Tour Instagram page, and I'm a fellow Beatles nerd and gear collector as well. And it's a pleasure to be with you guys tonight. So, yeah.
All right, and how about Grant?
Yeah. I'm Grant Gerlach. I'm a musician. I play in a band. I play in a Beatles band called Beatology. Dom is the other guitar player in there. So a lot of the stuff that I do, you can find on that channel.
Cool, and how about Ethan?
Oh, saving me for last. Okay. I'm Ethan Alexanian. I host a different Beatles podcast called Fans on the Run. Tagline is the podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. Does what it says on the tin. I know these guys. I like these guys, and I'm happy to be here.
And you're also a special guest for what other reason?
Is it because I'm on the new Beatles song? No.
Because you designed the logo.
Oh,
Yes, Ethan is the mastermind behind our incredible logo.
So if you need more words turned into guitars, Ethan's your guy.
Sounds like a good deal.
I gotta ask you, Ethan, though, how does it feel to be on the other end of a podcast?
I feel frightened. I feel vulnerable.
Aroused.
That's the
I wasn't gonna say it myself, but
those are all right answers.
that Hard Day's Night drumhead behind Michael makes me feel things.
Happy to help.
He doesn't say anything about all the Vox amps behind Paul, though.
Not that we're judging, just
They're in the shadows right now.
Oh, those are all the right answers. That's good answers. Good.
Who's the youngest member we have tonight, Grant or Ethan?
I think it's Grant, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I'm 21, so
I'm also 21.
Oh,
So let's see. Okay, let's narrow it down even more. When's your birthday, Ethan?
August 22nd, 2002.
Okay, I'm June 7, 2002.
Oh, what do I win?
It's gonna be just a typical Paul and George friendship where I am never gonna
Jesus
stop
Christ.
reminding you that you're younger. No.
So this is perfect then. So you know what? Let's start off in order with the youngest to the oldest on how we all feel about the new Now and Then song. So we get to see kind of a generational gap in a way to see how everybody feels differently about it. So who was the youngest? Was it Ethan or Grant? Ethan. All right, Ethan. So we're going to start this off by and that's the whole point of this episode, of course, is we're going to be talking about the new Now and Then song and our reaction, feelings, and everything to it. So, Ethan, the song itself, tell us, what's it make you feel? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so just before coming on, I was told that there was a new Beatles song, and, I'm surprised no one's talked about this yet. No. I've like I assume you guys, I've heard the original demo for years. I knew it was one of the anthology songs, and I I feel like I I'll just put it this way. Not blown away with Now and Then. I went into it really, really wanting to like it. I really wanted it to become, my new favorite Beatles song or something. And I was just kind of left feeling empty. Like, is this it? is this the last Beatles song?
Unfortunately, Ethan, we have an eject button on Gear There and Everywhere.
Yeah.
So,
You're out of the group. You aren't in the Brady Bunch anymore.
Yeah, I think I'll be leaving the group now.
Ethan, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it?
See you around the club.
How do you feel about it in comparison to the previous songs that they did in '95?
That is why I feel like I'm so harsh on Now and Then, because I think Real Love is one, even though it is less of a songwriting collaborative effort than Free as a Bird was. I feel like it's a stronger song. It's a stronger recording. It feels like the Beatles.
Yeah.
It sounds like the Beatles. Those John, Paul, and George harmonies are there, which I feel like make or break a Beatles song.
And in
even Mr. Moonlight has all the Beatle harmonies, but Now and Then doesn't.
Well, Mr. Moonlight was the first Beatles song I ever heard, so that's kind of the one that got me hooked. I know it's kind of surprising,
But you're right. But it's also lacking the Jeff Lynne touch, and I think that's what made Free as a Bird and Real Love good. They had guts.
Well, because people kind of, I hear people complain a good amount that Jeff Lynne just made Free as a Bird and Real Love sound like ELO. And I'm like, okay, but who does ELO sound like?
The band that was born out of the idea of let's make more music like where the Beatles left off with I Am the Walrus. That was their mission statement.
Yeah.
There are worse people to help sculpt a demo into something sounding like the Beatles than Jeff Lynne.
Because George even apparently refused, he said, unless Jeff Lynne produces it, because I think there was the deal where George Martin was out because of his hearing issues, where George was like, yeah, if Jeff Lynne doesn't produce it, I'm not doing it.
But you still had Jeff Emmerich involved.
Yeah, and you had Jeff too. Well, Emmerich.
So
I feel like the new song, you can really feel the absence of George.
Has the song grown on you at all in the time it's been released? It's been about 2 weeks now.
It has grown on me a little bit. I kind of find the chorus coming back to me, where at first it just kind of, against a just brick wall.
Now I have to ask all of you, what do you think about them cutting the bridge out?
That's what I was actually going to bring up, because he mentioned the lack of. It doesn't feel as much like a collaborative effort between John and Paul, especially. And I would say the closest thing to a collaborative effort was the bridge getting cut, which is not a great thing. So I think.
Well, Paul's slide guitar took the bridge, right?
Yeah, kind of did.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
but there's a whole different
the D minor to C.
Yeah, but it didn't modulate in the way that it did the F sharp minor in the bridge. It kind of adds a different texture to the song.
Yeah.
But
is there anyone here who prefers it without the bridge?
I didn't really know the song too well, believe it or not. I've heard a lot of Beatle outtakes and have a lot of Beatle outtakes, but this particular one I really wasn't that familiar with, and I actually heard it after the fact. I heard the bridge after the fact, and I was okay with it being cut out. We don't know if Lennon was alive and Harrison was alive, they could have cut it out anyhow. They that's what songwriting is. It's mixing and matching and finding the right vibe.
Sure.
I felt, Sam had asked me when it first came out how I felt about it, and I was the same way. I was kind of like milquetoast, and I felt it didn't have as much of a Beatles sound as I would have liked, and I think we have all these expectations. but that's what they were working with. You're working with a cassette tape, and it's amazing they were able to pull it apart from the piano so they could work with his voice. And then, of course, you're not working with the same producer, maybe as the other two songs, Real Love and Free as a Bird, but you're not working with George Martin. And even with the strings, you're not working with George Martin. So it's going to be a little bit different. They did the best they could. You talk about, how you feel now about it. I grew to love the song. The chorus now, I absolutely love it. And there are things that, in my life, in the last year, the song really hits true with. Family loss. I lost my mother a year ago. And now every time I hear the song, I think of that. And it's not really about death. It's about, friendship and, remember me. I think that at first I felt it was overproduced. And you were talking about the Beatle harmonies. They're kind of in there, but I think they're buried by the production because I actually was listening for them. And I think there's some overproducing there. Some of it I like, and some of it, it is what it is. I do love the song though. I think the song is really good. And obviously other people think that too now because it went to #1 in England. So, right then and there, we can criticize it all we want, but it's an amazing thing that 50 years later, the Beatles have a #1 hit all over again.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
nobody can argue with that. And also, I know in my case, at least, I'm never going to argue for anything that brings new Beatles, quote unquote, anything that keeps them out there and introduces people.
Oh, Grant, you're celebrating.
Dude, why is it doing that, Tom? Wasn't it?
You just love the song so much.
Did I take the wrong pill?
Can we actually do a quick show of hands? Because instead of maybe going around, that may take too long. Can we see how many people love the song?
I do now.
Yeah. Or maybe have positive feelings about it.
Give me one
I
sec.
love
Let
it.
me change it to
say-
grid view over here so everyone can be seen.
Looks like it's maybe 6 or 7 if I'm counting right. Yeah. I see Perry. Yeah. Ethan, and my girlfriend likes it too. She just chimed in.
So is it just me and Ethan that don't love it?
Oh, I'm in the middle with it because two things. Well, there's a bunch of things, but two things real quick I just want to say about it is the solo. George style. That is not George style. I don't care what anybody says. That is not George style. It's not how George would do it. On my way home from work today, I watched a Rick Beato video he just put out about the top 10 country songs right now. There's a song by Megan Moroney, I'm Not Pretty. You should hear this song. It's crazy. You think George Harrison is playing slide in this song. This country song that's #2 right now has more of a George Harrison feel than this song does in any way, shape, or form.
If you watch Sam's
that's a
cover,
big
though,
letdown for me.
just want to plug Sam's cover
a big
because
letdown.
Sam plays the exact same notes and gets the Harrison feel. I think tone is a big factor.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. Sam sounded closer to George than Paul did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
That's
I don't want it misconstrued that I hate the song. I mean, I contributed somewhat to its chart success, in a way.
I was going to say, I got
we got
that
Liam.
in
there
I
he
got
is.
that
Oh,
in
hey, Liam.
the
Has anybody?
Oh, wait, can we see him?
I'm trying
Solo?
to figure this out for like the last.
Yeah, there he is.
There we go. All right.
Has anybody heard any outtakes of George's actual solos that were done in '95?
I don't think those have ever surfaced.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually did a solo because
Yeah.
they only worked on it for a day or two.
Maybe
So
they
he
can
contributed the
that.
electric guitar thing.
Now
but-
he did do the little fills that you hear
Yeah,
in the
I could-
song.
Tell that too,
Those are from '95. Yeah.
because I don't like the fills.
Oh, they're great. They're great.
I don't like the
I've
fills.
worked on my own
I-
cover for the past 3 weeks, and those, when you kind of study them, slow them down, and isolate them, they're distinctly George Harrison
I was
films.
going to say, it's just classic George.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's
There's
one
much more
there
than meets
that
the eye.
he's like a did it. It's like a syncopated thing that he does in there, and I just think it's trite. I don't think it's very good. But Harrison came up with a lot of ideas that were shot down, and then the brilliant ones got through the filter of Lennon and McCartney anyhow.
Well, and also, George, from everything that I've been hearing, was just never that enthusiastic about Now and Then.
Yeah, do we have any clarity on whether he was talking about the ability
so-
to isolate the voice versus the actual
Not
song?
to, I was going to say not to.
And
Let
one
me
other
find the quote that I was thinking
George was
of.
bored. George was bored to tears when Paul McCartney was writing Get Back, when you watch the movie. And George was like, oh, God, and he didn't realize that a masterpiece was being written either.
Yeah, George was a good check on some of the more esoteric impulses of the other members of the band, too. So I think he called it effing rubbish when he heard it for the first time.
Yeah.
Around like 8:30 in the morning, too. And he was yawning because he was tired. I feel.
Oh, yeah, that
couldn't be it.
But he loved Get Back. He ended up doing like an outtake.
Yeah, but when he was writing it, he was literally bored. You could see it in his face and tired.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, I finally found it. Because I've been talking with a ton of my Beatle friends, quote unquote, about this. Obviously, like I know all of you have. And one of them sent me this. I don't know what article this is from. It's clearly from something he read. I don't know the exact article, but it talks about George's opinion of the song, because that kind of it sort of bothered me in a sense that I felt like they were really pushing in the promotional aspect of the song. It just felt like they were trying to push so hard to spin George's opinion. It just felt super forced. You know what I mean? It wasn't even just, oh, he just didn't like the quality of it. It just felt like, no. It was the quality. It was only the quality of the cassette. You know what I mean? Just really out there. So here's this quote. In 2021, Mark Cunningham, the technical musical consultant to Beatles press officer Derek Taylor, told the Daily Beast what Harrison had told him when Cunningham had asked why the Beatles didn't record the third song. He was very critical, Cunningham said. He was a real downer about it and said, I wasn't really interested. He said, apart from the quality, which was worse than the other two, I didn't think it was much of a song. So that's one of my main gripes is I'm like, why are you trying to push it so much? You know what I mean? Because it feels very forced.
Especially since we have spent this whole time hearing stuff like, we only did a song if all four of us agreed on it, and I thought that was kind of contradictory. Yeah.
You can tell there were a few projects that couldn't happen until John and George had died. Things that Paul always wanted to do but had to veto. Yeah, this was one of them. The Let It Be Naked was one of them. And I think Olivia Harrison had to release that press release after Now and Then came out saying, George would have loved this. He would have really enthusiastically participated.
What else was she going to say?
Well,
exactly.
The whole
that's PR.
Well, and then coming up with the whole story, he had the clock at Now and Then, and I saw it, and Paul called me. It's like, oh, well, what are the chances of that? You know what I mean? It just felt like classic PR.
Now,
which I'm not faulting them for, because
this is kind
you
of
got to do it.
To me, it felt like clearly the same marketing team that forced McCartney 3 onto us.
Absolutely.
Was behind the Now and Then campaign.
Well, because he did the cover, right? It's the same guy that did the cover.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, well, okay, let's talk about that. What do you guys think of the cover?
Boring.
Yeah, it does not look Beatle-y at all to me.
Liam, I saw you had it there.
Yeah, the back cover is a little more interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the clock. Yeah.
Well, and there's the clock. Yeah.
Apparently,
but the front.
Mixed feelings. It's grown on me a bit. I like the color, and I think the angle of the letters is supposed to reflect the picture on the red and blue albums of the Beatles at successive layers of that, whatever the building was. If you layer them on top of each other, they match, apparently. That's kind of convoluted logic for the cover, but it has grown on me at least.
Yeah.
What about compared to, like, Sgt. Pepper?
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
It's just such,
But at least the Sgt. Pepper cover said the Beatles. Or it said Beatles, at least.
Wait, Liam, what'd you say?
Which?
Yeah, the Bird EP cover where it had Lennon's artwork on the front. I think that was a little more interesting.
And then now it is. Yeah.
Well, and it's a drawing of it's funny because that's a drawing of Pete Shotton too. Turns out his best friend growing up, so it almost like it brings it kind of even more for full circle. I thought it was really neat too, because I mean, you got the birds there. obviously. But even then, it's just, you know what I mean? It kind of brings it back, in my opinion.
So mostly positive feelings overall about the song. For the most part,
don't get me wrong. For me, I don't hate it by any means. I noticed that at least among some of the fans my age, it was like there was an expectation that you either think this is the greatest song of all time or you think it's terrible and therefore you're not a true fan, which kind of disappointed me in a sense, because that's kind of like the least Beatle-y thing I heard. You know what I mean? It's not my favorite, don't get me wrong, but I'm not like, ooh, it's terrible, because it's growing on me, especially since I heard the Dolby mix.
Here's
that one.
Here's a thought I haven't heard expressed anywhere about Now and Then that I'm curious if anyone else has thought of this. The true benchmark to me of a Beatles song is whether people immediately try and play it backwards and find clues like, see, they're finally saying that Paul really is dead. But
we
no,
already know he's dead. That's not a question.
Oh boy.
But no one's talking about playing Now and Then backwards.
Do we want to try that tonight? I don't know if anybody has the...
You're there.
I think the meaning stays the same. It's then and now, right?
And then now, yeah.
Then and now.
Can we hear what Sam thought? I think we should point out that Sam, uniquely amongst any of us and maybe a lot of people on the earth, put out a cover of a song, having heard it for the first time only a few hours later. Sam, what were your thoughts on Now and Then?
Well, thank you, Michael. It was interesting. I was trying to find a leaked version of it the week leading up to it because I wanted to get a head start on covering it. But they were really tight about it, and I didn't actually get to hear it until the moment it came out. I downloaded it on iTunes, and I was expecting at 10 a.m. to be able to listen to it, but it took about 10 minutes for iTunes for it to show up in my purchased. So I went on live BBC radio and streamed it that way. So it was kind of cool to hear the last Beatles song on BBC Live. And it was actually funny, like leading up to it, they were interviewing some old like Beatles fans, and there was this old woman who said, I showed up to the gig in 1964 and my friends and I decided to throw jelly beans at John because we heard it was his favorite. And the BBC interviewer was like, you know, she was going on, and he's like, all right, the song's coming out, we got to let you go. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed the song. I was really nervous that the AI was going to take over and they would auto-tune John's voice or Paul's, or, you know, Ringo auto-tunes his voice often these days. So I was actually pleasantly surprised that it did sound like a Beatles song, maybe a bit overproduced, but it wasn't like this kind of modern piece of garbage that I was worried it would be.
So on that note, so some people did say that they think they should have de-aged Paul's voice. What do you think about that?
Why?
That was one of the ballsiest choices in the mix, is to have Paul's voice now. I'm actually kind of proud of him in a weird way. The temptation to de-age was there. There are plenty of YouTube videos now with the de-age Paul that sound just like him, and he chose not to. And if you hear the isolated vocal, not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pitchy, it's warbly.
Is Ringo on the song?
Do you think that could have been done on purpose, though? Like they put his
Yeah, I agree.
Now and then. Yeah, now.
Putting him with John's young voice. Sort of like, yeah, now and then.
Right.
I miss
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I think that may have been intentional.
Yeah, that's taken some time to sink in. When you first hear it, it's a bit shocking.
Yeah.
But I think the symbolism of it has started to seep in a bit for me, at least. And you get used to the harmony, too. It stopped sounding jarring to me, and now it is kind of beautiful.
Perry, you made a great
I
point.
agree with that.
Just emotional. It's an emotional song. When you kind of look past the video, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, you know, it is an emotional song, and I really do think that's one of the reasons why Paul was so adamant on finishing it, because I think John wrote it about him.
I think so too. Absolutely. Just quickly about the video, one of the things I love about the video, there's a lot of things I actually like about the video, so I know I'm going to have to put my flame suit on, but when Ringo is singing with Paul, the chorus, I love that. to be able to see them actually sing the chorus together, that's just absolutely cool and a great way to end, in my opinion.
They added Ringo though in post, right? They weren't actually in the same room.
Yeah, but at least you could see them singing it together, and I thought that was really cool, regardless of how they did it, because I don't know why they couldn't get together, like you said before. But it was really cool to see them both at the microphone, actually singing the song together, and Ringo was, really doing a good job of putting some effort into it. With the way he looked, he was enthusiastic about it, and that felt really good to see the last two Beatles together, kind of singing together.
It is pretty funny now that I'd never considered this, but the fact that in that video, John and George were filmed in the same room on the same day, but Paul and Ringo weren't.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's an age thing. If an 83-year-old just can't fly across the country as easily as someone.
Wait,
much
he's
younger.
doing jumping jacks on the stage.
Well, he's doing jumping jacks on the stage, and I know that there's I'm sure you guys have seen the picture that I guess was in like Mary McCartney's new cooking book of Paul and Ringo. Like Ringo went to London for that Abbey Road documentary.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So it's not so. I wouldn't necessarily fall because don't get me wrong, that crossed my mind too. We're like,
well, but there's also footage.
risky.
There's footage in the thing of McCartney in Los Angeles. Like,
yeah.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Ringo
orchestra.
is,
Yeah.
Ringo is the fittest 83-year-old probably on the planet.
Absolutely.
I don't think Ringo has any plans to ever return to England. I think he just wants to live in LA the rest of his life.
You really think so?
Well, definitely
Yeah.
in terms,
He
definitely
only
in
has
terms
one
of living. Yeah.
Apparently, he sold all of his house in England, so I don't think he ever really plans on returning.
Man.
Did you guys hear the story about the string players getting into the strings of it? They didn't know that it was Now and Then. They were told it was a Paul McCartney
Give and take.
solo
Yeah.
project.
Give and take.
Yeah.
And apparently one of the string players died before it was
Yeah, I
released, so
saw
she
that
never
one,
knew.
Yeah.
It's the saddest story of all time. She played on
What
the last Beatles song and never knew it.
What did you guys think of the strings? Did you like it, or was it buried
I
in the
liked
mix?
I think the strings are all right. Yeah.
I don't think they necessarily had a Beatles sound per se, and I don't know whether that was because of the room that they used, or maybe added reverb or the EQ. But Beatles strings on all the albums have a certain sound to them, and Abbey Road even released that package with the virtual strings from Abbey Road that have that sound. And again, maybe they're just using modern equipment rather than the old Red 47, and maybe that's part of it too. Using modern equipment.
The strings were recorded at Capitol, I think.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's not where the strings were normally recorded. They were recorded in Abbey Road, which has its own sound in Studio 3. So
And 2, I think, a good amount.
yeah. Well, they did the package, the Abbey Road strings in 2. Interestingly enough, I think Eleanor Rigby was done there. I'm not sure. But that's kind of interesting that they're using modern equipment now. McCartney's older now, so it's going to sound like a different Beatles. It has to.
Right.
Sounds like them now.
Yeah. Right.
Ringo's drums too were also a little bit different. He used like the stick, the rim of the snare. What did you guys think of that? Like Michael, especially because you're covering it, right?
Sure. Yeah. And just to go back to the strings too. It's one of those parts with any Beatles song where the more you listen to it, the more interesting it reveals itself to be. I've listened to the isolated strings, and it does remind me of Here Comes the Sun, like the slow fade in of a glorious chord. The stabs remind me of I Am the Walrus, Eleanor Rigby. I can tell where Giles was quoting Beatles songs, and I think if you listen to it, you can notice that upon some repeat listens. And same with every single part. The Ringo drumming is absolutely a Beatles-y part.
The bass line.
The bass line as well. Yeah, with Ringo, the fills have that falling down the stairs, swingy feel to them. He's off beat. He actually misses. He starts playing the snare and then goes back to the rim shots at one point. It's a wonderfully put together production. And I would recommend finding the isolated tracks because the more you listen to it, the more that becomes obvious. With Paul, no two verses are the same. This guy is some kind of savant. If I were playing a bass line to any song, I'd repeat a lick here and there. I'd repeat a rhythm or syncopation. Doesn't do it a single time in 4 minutes. I kind of hate him for it. Too much talent.
Ringo doesn't repeat fills.
That's true. Ringo really doesn't repeat fills.
No.
Not in the. And well, I don't know if you'd notice it as much as Paul. Maybe. But yeah, I've noticed it a little bit.
Could I add something about the strings?
Yeah.
It's one of the things about the song, and the strings are a part of it, is they sound like someone doing a masterful job of trying to consciously sound like the Beatles. Like the slide part is an emulation of George Harrison. Parts of the song feel like what was the original tagline of the Beatlemania Broadway show? Not the Beatles, but an incredible simulation.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it felt. It felt like a very, very well done facsimile of the Beatles, but there was just something missing. Like the strings were good. The slide part is good, but it doesn't. There's just something missing.
What would you say this one lacked that Real Love and Free as a Bird had? Because you said you enjoyed those two.
Well, Free as a Bird, I think about it this way. Within the first, 10 seconds of Free as a Bird, you can distinctly hear all four Beatles.
Yeah.
This, it had the bigger challenge of not trying to just fill the absence of one Beatle, but two, so they had even less to work with.
Also, with Free as a Bird, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't listen to that or Real Love very often, but the bit in the bridge or whatever, the whatever happened to the life we once knew, that bit, isn't that Paul added that after the fact, right? That's
no,
all.
John
Yeah, I
had
think
that
it
in the
was-
demo.
Oh, was that in the demo?
John sang the melody of that in the demo
Yeah.
and
Okay.
trailed off. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I haven't heard it.
And I think they might have said too that like Paul and George kind of refined some of the lyrics, because in the original demo he's not singing every single one of those words.
That's
He has
what I was
like
gonna...
whatever happened to.
Funny,
And then he
Adrian
kinda is
Belew,
like, "Da, da, da." So
Adrian Belew of King Crimson does I think an acoustic cover of Free as a Bird from like 1995, and he sings it like John Lennon's demo when he starts humming.
Really?
Yeah, and people start laughing and clapping like
It's a faithful cover. Yeah.
lyrics, but pretty interesting to hear actually. And
That's actually really cool.
it was actually before Anthology 1 was even released, which was kind of
oh
Really?
Wow.
yeah, or could have been from 94, but
I had a question about the anthology, like Now and Then, because the acoustic guitars are throughout the whole song, and apparently George Harrison played acoustic. So does that mean that in 95 they already cut the bridge and the structure that we hear is what they already had in place in 95?
That's a good question.
I don't hear the acoustics at all except in the verses.
so that's
Yeah, especially during the solo. I think they drop out. So I would suspect they had verse, chorus, acoustics, the George riffs. Didn't yet have that solo part yet, and there's no Harrison or even no acoustics in that section. But that's just speculation.
Do we
That
have
is
the
possible.
anthology version somewhere? Is there a bootleg of what they worked on, or?
I don't-
Supposedly there was a mix in like 2006 called the 1995 edition that was supposedly the bootlegs, but it wasn't. And then there came that mix in 2009 called the Rotten Apple remix, which supposedly had the bootlegs in it as well, but it was just some both times fan remixes.
Those
There was
remixes
never-
were fantastic. by the way.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Is
That's
it
the-
that I'd like some of the fan versions of Now and Then from way before the song came out more than the actual Beatle version?
You know what? Not to interrupt, but Ethan quoting the Rutles, I thought it kind of sounded like the Rutles. The first time I heard it, the song, not in a bad way. I'm not saying that as a put down. It was very, very similar. Like, I was kind of shocked. I was like, you know what? This could be a Rutles song. Like that was the first thing I heard.
Yeah. John's voice is a bit on the thin side, maybe because it was a demo on a boombox, and that nasally John impression is kind of a Rutles sound. So yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But he wasn't singing at full volume either.
I was gonna say I never even thought that might have been it. That does.
I dropped for a minute there. Does anyone want to recap something that they need to be?
We all trashed you. We just
cool.
insulted you.
It was the most unsettling thing because I dropped while speaking, and then everyone just stared at me, and I was like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, we turned the sound down on you and said rude things.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, you guys want to dive into the video real quick? You want to talk about how... I mean, right off the rip, let me just say that I just didn't really like some of the AI stuff, like George standing in New York City or wherever he was. Wasn't a fan of some of that stuff.
That wasn't AI.
That wasn't AI. It just did look kind of weird. It was definitely upscaled.
It was like upscaled, right?
Yeah, something was enhanced about it.
It's like they threw the Peter Jackson, upscaling stuff at it.
I don't like John's pointing.
Can we call it the
John's what?
filter?
Yeah,
I don't like John's pointing. I don't like that whole hello goodbye stuff. Don't like any of that stuff. I don't like how George was there. I didn't like any of that stuff. They could have done that all better, like showed older clips of them. I liked how Paul was sitting there. I thought that was very nice to see him in the background, walking, and you see him now. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, just like John pointing and stuff like that. Like I'm just like,
I think going on right now? I think, well, for us, for one thing, I'll try to say in its defense, but I mean, I'm not a fan of it, but the thing I'll try to say in its defense is that I feel like for people who don't actually know where those clips come from, maybe that's a lot more endearing. Like, because like all of us would have watched that and known where every clip from that whole thing was from. Right. But maybe if you don't know that, you're like, oh wow, this is like new footage that we've never seen before or something like that.
Do you remember that commercial that came out for the Beatles rock band?
Yeah.
Where it was they manipulated the Get Back footage to look like the Beatles on Abbey Road.
Right.
They put a fake beard on John and it looked off.
Looked pretty convincing. Yeah.
It did look convincing though. At the time it did. Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was like, wow, it's them. Found out it wasn't.
It was them, kind
of. Was, but
I mean, I would
people walking across.
Yeah, right.
I would definitely say I think they could have done AI stuff because I've done it. So some of you have seen my AI videos I've done, or one video. But
wait, you've done AI stuff?
I have.
Ryan, have you done anything with the one I sent you?
Not yet. I haven't enough time. It's time consuming. Should I show the clip I'm talking about real quick, just so people know what I'm talking about?
Stay on topic, fellas.
Okay.
Stay on topic.
Exactly. I'll stay on topic.
Stay on topic.
I'll just leave a seed of excitement there. But
we should hear what Liam. What did Liam think of the track? Because he wasn't on video for the first bit.
Oh, okay.
I personally enjoyed it. Yeah, I got a little emotional first time I heard it, especially towards the end with the string. And but when I picked up the vinyl, the Target exclusive red vinyl, I turned it up really loud on my turntable and kind of blew my socks off. But yeah, I thought the vocals just sound really upfront and crystal clear and crispy in a way, and it was mixed by a guy named Spike Stent, who he's more of a contemporary mixer, but he mixes for people like Billie Eilish and pop stars and stuff. But I thought he did a pretty good job mixing the track, so I don't really have any complaints about it.
It is well mixed.
It just sounds like a Beatles track at the end of the day, really. No matter what they do, it just sounds like the Beatles. So, and same with Free as a Bird and Real Love. It just has a certain quality to it. But I think it would be pretty interesting to hear maybe like a Jeff Lynne mix of the song at some point if he had his hands on the track. I think it'd be cool to hear like a Jeff Lynne interpretation.
Get some channels
Real-
on there.
I think we should do a show of hands real quick of who liked the music video. Because we know who liked the song. Who liked the music video? That was very fitting.
I did.
Absolutely loved it.
Took a few views. I think
Yeah.
the first time I was there, I was with it for the first 10 seconds. We've got footage from the actual sessions. We haven't seen it before. And then there's a little silhouette of a CGI John Lennon looking off into the beach, and a slow fade up of Paul McCartney, and then John Lennon nods knowingly. Almost threw up. Thought that was the cheesiest thing. And this is a band that has avoided overstatement for 60 years now.
Well, and cheesiness too.
And cheesiness. I actually tweeted that it was the most embarrassing Beatles product since Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, I will say the first view, because I woke up that morning and I was like, okay, I know the video's coming out. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wake up a little bit so I can really take it in. I open up like Facebook or something, and sure enough, there's screenshots of it. And I see Paul and Ringo green screen with 67 John and George, and I was like, you know what? We're watching it now. So the first time I was kind of like, what? But again, like the song, they're both growing on me.
Same.
They're both growing on me.
Absolutely.
It takes a bit.
I realize that it's kind of Paul's version of When We Was Fab, especially the video element. It's goofy, it's self-referential, and it's meant to not be taken too seriously. It's a bit jarring because the song itself is so sad and mournful.
Yeah.
But once I accepted that and got used to it, I actually now kind of love it too, with some qualifications.
I love the contrast of Lennon pointing and being silly in a song that really is kind of sad. And it kind of made it so it was a balanced thing and it wasn't too melancholy, because then I think it would have been a drag.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated
Well,
those
and
funny
personally,
moments.
I think John would have done that had he been alive. He probably would have been doing that. He probably would have been standing in that studio fake,
Taking the piss out of it.
pretending that.
True.
Yeah, I feel like he would have done that.
I saw someone post about this on Facebook, and I tried it. Is that if you don't like the Now and Then video, put on the Free as a Bird video, turn the volume off, and then play Now and Then, and it works better than the actual Now and Then video.
Yeah.
Or try
One of
Wizard of Oz, do some Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that, Sam. That's funny. I was just thinking of that.
One of the things that kind of, I keep watching it, and it kind of catches me every time. What the hell were they doing with Ringo's drums? They looked so weird.
Do you mean when they insert Ringo into the Hello Goodbye promo?
They sort of, but there's different shots where it's the Hello Goodbye kit, the really big oversized one, but then there's other actually reskinned it to be like the Black Oyster Pearl kit, but the dimensions are all wrong. And so you have this giant tom in the middle of the kit, basically.
That's something only we would care about, though. Let's be real.
And I kind of thought about
yeah.
it too. I was like, that's kind of a nod to the Hello Goodbye, because they do the same thing where it's that super little kid, and then they zoom in on him, and it's that massive.
Yeah.
So I kind of looked at it from that point of view, because at first I was kind of taken aback, but then I'm like, well, you know what I mean? Expect the unexpected with them.
Do you guys
You know what I mean?
that it was Peter Jackson's intent to make it kind of more like funny?
Well, it is. The thing I will question about that is there was that quote the week before or so where I think he was talking to Danny, and they acted like there was this whole like emotional thing going on, and then you see it and you're like what is this?
There's an interview with Peter Jackson where he says he cut it once and it was too depressing, so he recut it to include the goofy elements.
Right. So one word, bittersweet.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's-
absolutely.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah, I think this song will take on a different meaning once one or both of them pass. So it may be worth reevaluating then, because I think everyone will think of it entirely differently.
Absolutely.
one just talking about, now and then kind of gets me a little flustered because I'm trying to not sound like, a dick, because I'm glad the song exists, but I had kind of thought before that Real Love worked really good as a bookend to the Beatles.
No, I'm right there with you.
Like, if it was a book,
it's an adjustment.
Like, if it was a book, the final chapter, it ends with the end, and then Real Love works as like an epilogue to the Beatles. But
Ethan,
then
we both know the real last Beatles song is Carnival of Light.
That's true. That's true.
I can't wait to see what Peter Jackson cooks up for that.
I was gonna say, I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Do you think they should remix the 95 songs now with this new technology so they could make it better and separate the tracks?
I think so, 100%. I was thinking about that. I think they should. I think they should separate it all out and just make it more crisp, like what we hear with Magical Mystery Tour. Something like that.
The only issue I have with the 1995 mix is, the Jeff Lynne drums. Though that's the only thing that takes me out of it. I actually kind of like how, distorted John's vocals sound and the piano, because it sounds like a studio trick that the Beatles would have done. Like it sounds. Yeah, it's like John Lennon singing to us from the ether from another dimension.
Yeah,
and then the other three Beatles. Like, it was a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
It was still the four Beatles, but it was like the one mythical one and the three left,
I like that concept, but to me it just sounded like bad audio. I mean, if that Lennon was so thin, that vocal was so thin that McCartney had to, do another vocal to thicken it up with him. I'd like to hear what it sounds like if they could separate the piano and get a good vocal sample of that, and then do a remix with, the same kind of feel, or try to emulate the mix, but with a better quality to it, because the vocals in that were so thin. And it was like you could tell it was taken from a cassette. I think with this new technology, they might be able to make it so not so quite. It doesn't sound like it's from a cassette. I thought the vocals in this one, Now and Then, were amazing for what it was. For being taken off of a boombox with the piano against it, I thought the vocals were really clean and clear.
Oh, that was incredible. And that was probably the part that got me the most emotional. Especially watching that little short film that they put out the day before when they were doing we did this, and then it was John, because I was sitting there and I'm like, what's it going to sound like? How good is it going to be? Because I had heard the demo and it's not good quality. I'm like, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? And then he comes in and I was just like,
it is emotional.
It was
It's amazing.
Incredible, yeah.
There's actually, it's not the first time something like that's happened, because when Buddy Holly died, they took some of his demos on acoustic guitar in the 60s and added a band to it, and it's a lot less, it's not a good quality compared to Free as a Bird, but it's
still
emotional.
Works. Yeah.
The genesis of the idea was... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
A lot of the drums are off time on those Buddy Holly tracks, on those...
Yeah.
First. A
Some
lot
of it's awful.
Yeah.
Because they did it pretty... Because they did it pretty quickly after he died, too, right? Like, it was not a long time.
1960, 60.
But
something
they
like
did
that.
it twice. There was two different bands that did it, and one version sounds good, the other band, it's out of phase and sounds awful and out of time. But it's kind of emotional to hear Buddy's voice. It's also kind of thin and distant and ghost-like.
But also back to what Perry was saying, I think the reason the vocals on Real Love sound so tinny and thin was because they sped it up to E when the demo was actually recorded in D. So
They made John sound
like he was on helium or something. So.
like a chipmunk. Yeah.
Chipmunk.
Exactly.
But it's kind of like, you could argue that he sounds like that on Lucy in the Sky, where they sped up all the vocals.
Or
on
Magical
that
Mystery
one.
Tour.
Yeah.
Or even that outtake of Yellow Submarine. The track is slightly sped up, and Ringo his voice just
That was a big technique with the Beatles. They sped up a lot of, like the background vocals in Magical Mystery Tour. They're really high. Well, that's because they were sung lower and then brought up to speed. They did that a lot in the studio.
Yeah.
So it's not that out of place that they did that on Real Love.
No.
Right.
Right.
Not at all.
I haven't really seen anyone talk about, with Now and Then, how sped up, not in terms of like pitch, but in terms of tempo, the new one is compared to the demo.
It's fast.
Like I went into it, thinking, okay, I know how the original demo sounds, and then it just kind of hit, and it's like, Jesus Christ, this is faster than I thought it would be.
You guys want to hear something crazy? And
do you not like the new tempo?
I feel like it. I feel like it just sounds too fast.
We had a dirge in Free as a Bird, and there was all that hype for this new Beatles song that is hella depressing. Real Love, I think, was
because
more
I was
commercial.
actually wondering what you guys' perspective was. How was the anticipation leading up to this? How did it compare to when Free as a Bird and Real Love were released? Because I would have no first-hand knowledge.
I was 3 years old, so I don't remember
that. Yeah.
Well, I'm the oldest here, and I remember it very clearly. And I was just so happy to hear the Beatles again. I mean, it was different because we've already had that. But that was the first time they actually reunited on tape. And that was more magical even than this in a way because, this was the last thing. We know they did it twice before. But the first time it came out, and I agree with Michael, that tempo on that song is really slow on Free as a Bird. But I was so happy to hear the Beatles again. And especially when you hear George singing the bridge and then Paul singing the bridge. And then the background vocals were pure Abbey Road. Yeah. It was just amazing to hear Paul and George sing again like that. So I think because it was the first one, we gave it kind of a pass on a lot of the stuff we're talking about. This being the last one, I think the title's apropos, the subject's apropos. It's a great way for them to bow out.
Yeah.
I always thought they should have released Real Love first because it's more commercial. Had Free as a Bird as a B-side. And then with Now and Then, one thing I like about the fan mixes is they end on the chorus, not the A minor of the verse. So the last actual send-off for the Beatles would have been something a bit more uplifting. But the message itself, as Perry said, the title itself, I think has its own weight and nostalgia value. And I think this will be, in 20 or 30 years, something we fans think of as incredibly emotional. Now and Then, I Miss You won't just reference John talking about Paul, Paul talking about John, but how we think of this group that no longer exists. This is where I get a bit emotional, too.
Very good.
Now we already have Peter Jackson saying that more Beatles music is conceivable with this new technology, Yeah,
let's fancy up the Star Club.
Which I thought was kind of funny, too, that they were doing such a big deal. This is it. This is the end. This is what it's going to be. And then a couple days later, he comes out. It's still, I was like, oh.
I think there's going to be more to come out.
Cool. I think some demixed live at the BBC would be pretty cool. Like, make some really true stereo mixes of some of those kind of fuzzy.
Keep your hands off my baby.
Oh, yeah. I would love to see what he would do with that.
Off of a car radio.
Off of a car radio.
And overdubbed in the 80s. Yeah.
How about the stage?
My Way would be really cool to hear.
How about
the Shea Stadium concerts? They could clean those up.
I've been waiting for that for...
Yeah, I mean, because when they released them in, 76, 77, the album came out with all the Shea Stadium performances, or was it Hollywood Bowl? I can't remember.
Hollywood
Bowl.
Yeah, Hollywood Bowl, right. So they could clean up those mixes with this technology, pull down the crowd a little bit, and that would be kind of interesting, too.
They did that a little bit in 2016. It would be interesting because I'm sure the technology has come a lot far.
How much better was it in the 2016? I'm not familiar with those mixes.
Much better.
Yeah, it was. It sounded like a live show.
Right.
I think this is all going to be what actually happens. There are more re-releases or releases of actual things that exist. I don't think we'll hear any new Beatles songs or songs released as a new Beatles song. I think this is it. And probably for the best, too.
I do want to pick your
I'll-
brains though.
Sorry.
On the Peter Jackson said there was at least like 14 hours of footage used from the Freeza Bird Real Love and Now and Then sessions. I mean, it'll probably be released at some point. You
Get
think?
back, round 2.
That would
That's
be
what I'm
awesome.
saying. It'll come out at some point.
Well, and also, just
Also,
speaking
Peter
of
Jackson,
the
there's 4
yeah,
hours
speak-
of White Album footage too. So.
Really?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Is that not just Apple promotional footage? Or is that actually White Album footage? Is that what you said?
Them recording Hey Jude, rehearsing Hey Jude.
Okay,
and
right.
July,
That is true.
stuff
Is
like
that-
and
What else is there?
Mother Nature's Son footage and stuff like that.
Yeah, I never knew that.
I
Wow.
think it'd be really cool to like see like a little 2-hour kind of mini documentary on the White Album sessions. Like
That would be
in Get
amazing.
Style. I think that would be absolutely amazing.
That's the
Absolutely.
best. That was probably actually my favorite part of, or like the part I was most excited about when I first saw it of the Now and Then video. Is there's that one shot. I think I'm remembering right. Isn't there that one shot of John and Yoko on the floor during?
In the 12-minute documentary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was in. What was that
if they
from?
could possibly clean that,
That
up,
was
like
from
all-
the.
that would be really cool to see.
That was like the Apple
Okay,
promotional.
that's what I was
film.
thinking,
think
but I
it's-
wasn't sure.
I think it's the same day that we see that footage of him doing Blackbird. They could have been a day apart.
Tapping the
I'm
shoes.
not-
Yeah.
yeah. Which, speaking of the footage, that's what I was gonna say. That's what I loved about the video, was seeing all that footage that clean. Just that was another.
What did you guys think of the animated faces at the end? that
Oh
were
my
taken
God.
from photos?
It haunts that shot of John at the Village Fete with the animated face. It haunts my nightmares.
It's pretty terrifying. It's nightmare fuel. And when AI gets super good in 30 years, we're gonna look back on it and be like, that's bad.
Yeah.
Do it again.
It's not going to be 30 years. It's going to be 10. I'm telling you. Someone,
I think it'll be 2.
I think we're going to get like, fan-made full "Please Please Me" recording sessions in the studio that looks all right.
We'll look back on it the way people look back on the CGI from the David Lynch Dune.
Oh boy.
There is good CGI out there. There are good deepfakes out there too. It's confusing why that shot of Lennon looking into the sunset or sunrise looks like it was made in 1989.
Well, that's
Yeah.
based
CGI
off
quality.
of. That's actually based off a real photo.
That I found out too. That's based
Yeah.
off a real photo, but it's Peter Jackson. Like, he has access with the Beatles' resources and Disney's resources. Like, this could have looked like a resurrected Beatle, and it looked like, I don't know, Star Trek 4.
I like that little clip of that home movie clip that showed in the video of John, in by the cliffs of Moher in Ireland.
Oh yeah, doing his whole
That little
dancing
16,
thing.
that little super 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That little.
That was cleaned up too. That was upscaled and had no film grain.
And looked great. Looked
Yeah, that-
incredible.
Pretty sure that was taken in April or May of '64.
Yeah.
Believe it.
Now, was that
Around-
new? Is that something we've seen before?
So I had seen some other shots from that trip. He's in the same outfit and everything.
And living in the material world, they show a clip of him on the edge of the cliff, looking
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
So that was the first time I had seen that shot.
Mhm.
Was in the video.
What do you guys think about the timing of I don't want to get into the whole Red and Blue album, but like they decided to make this kind of a co-release in a way. And I don't know about you guys, but I heard rumors about a Rubber Soul box set and I got really excited. So I was a little disappointed when it was
you got
blue and red.
at least half a Rubber Soul box set from the Red
Because of
album.
the remixes.
We're getting
Yeah,
a
they do
mind
sound
game
good.
deluxe in June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
episode on that,
I'm
boys.
looking forward to.
You say Mind Games?
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're redoing Mind Games. Yeah.
Like 72 tracks, I believe.
72.
And two of them good.
Yeah, that's true.
not
All right, so since this is gear there and everywhere, let's talk about some gear real quick. So amazing, Paul McCartney got his cavern bass back. We see it on the stand. Congratulations, Paul.
reproduction.
I know. So number 2, though, let's just talk about how George has that electrified SJ200 natural. He's got it plugged in. It looks like Paul's using a Martin D18, and that thing's got a capo. They both got capos on them.
And George's, I think, is a J185. Or
Yeah, I think it's J185
too. It's J185.
And they look a little bit smaller to the Free as a Bird sessions. I think it's the exact same guitars.
Probably is.
But why the capos? Michael, are you doing capos for your cover?
I would suspect in 1995 they recorded it in, I guess, this is my brain freezing. What's one step above A minor? G sharp minor? Yeah. Yeah, so I would suspect that for some reason maybe they were trying to speed it up and they used the capos, but I guess to use the rhythm track they might have slowed it down digitally to reuse the same performance. I'm not using capos, I'm just doing it in A minor.
They could have been down-tuned for Real Love because Real Love's an E-flat. It's like kind of in a gray area between E and E-flat.
Yeah, you know, I think they may have recorded Real Love even in D and sped it up.
You think?
Yeah. The acoustic guitars, they sound a bit more resonant, as if they were detuned a little bit. I don't know, just a theory.
Yeah. I have seen some footage from the Real Love and Free as a Bird sessions with Paul playing his Texan, but I just can't figure out what are they recording?
Free as a Bird.
I know, but like, what was that the final guitar used on the recording, or did he go back to his D28?
It might have been the final recording because I know George used Rocky on that.
You can kind of tell by the haircuts which session it is. I think for Free as a Bird, George has shorter hair and he's clean shaven. For Real Love and Now and Then, he looks like the caveman, like the thick beard and long hair.
My favorite version of George.
Me too.
You know, I just want to say,
McCartney's still got the McMullet.
Oh yeah.
I don't like the drum head thing. Things like that. I know it sounds weird to me. I don't like being lied to.
Can you explain that to the
it, you know, like, I don't know. I just don't like being lied to. Like, it's not original. It's not what it was.
Can you explain what you mean by that, Paul?
That they originally, when they were recording the song and making that video back in '95 or whatever it was what Paul McCartney's wife's band, Susie and
the Red Stripes.
Yeah. And then, of course, they AI generated or modified it somehow to have now the love piece one with the all you need is love thing.
Russ Lease painted. It's one of his...
No, Paul's always had that in his studio at Hogmill. That's actually a real drum head.
So here it sounds like Paul in real life had the Susie and the Red Stripes bass drum head behind George. Peter Jackson CGI added the love head that Russ painted. I guess to avoid having a Susie and the Red Stripes logo in a Beatles video.
Makes sense.
You could see the Susie and the Red Stripes head in the 12-minute clip from the day before.
I couldn't remember if it was in the Now and Then video or if it was the short film where, you can see the Susie head. So I just thought it was...
It was the documentary, for the actual video, that's what the CGI was.
Yeah.
So, Paul, you weren't a fan of being lied to?
Yeah, I don't like being lied to like that. You know, don't cover something like that up. That's not the way it was that day. You know, show me how it was back that day. I want to see it. I don't want to be lied to and have little things that were covered up. Because now it kind of takes away from it. So now, I don't know, it's just like... Then it's going to be tougher now to find the original material of that day. What did it really look like?
Paul, I don't want to burst your bubble, but John and George weren't actually there either.
Well, I know, but when they're showing George, though. You know, they're not showing an old clip. They're not showing an old John or an old... they're showing right from 95.
No, I know what you mean.
And they're covering that up in 95. If it was now the fake thing where, you see them with the drum kit, and the Hello Goodbye stuff, I'd understand that. But this is the raw footage from 95 of them working on the song. Don't cover stuff up in that.
Yeah,
and
I'm on Paul's side here. Yep.
You want to keep the history and the authenticity of that moment. I totally agree with you.
And that footage is easily, I think, the best part of the entire project. Seeing Paul, George, and Ringo bantering, talking like the Beatles did. You can see George messing up the Norwegian wood riff.
See,
All
now
of
I
that,
think-
yeah, that I would love to see in a Get Back documentary style, where you can see them bitching at each other and see George walk out, which he did again in the Threedles sessions.
Yeah,
in the
he
90s.
did in '95.
Yeah, that would all be wonderful to see. And I agree with Paul that seeing even that CGI'd was a bit depressing. Leave it as it is.
Yeah, there's no need for it either.
Oh,
Because I heard apparently that was a Peter Jackson call where he was like, "Yeah, I just thought it didn't look right."
Then use a
The-
different
The
shot.
Susie, yeah.
so
But
we got
just so
George
you
on
guys-
the-
I just want to explain to you real quick how big of a Beatles fan I am. I never knew this song existed. Even to this day, I don't know. I've never heard the original demo. I don't know anything about a bridge. I don't know anything about the song. Big Beatles fan.
There is a fan version I'm going to send you after this that I think is equally good as the Beatles version.
Oh, the Jamaican one? Fantastic.
Not the Jamaican one.
I heard one that was really clean, and it was just like the song production there, except it wasn't overproduced. I don't remember whether it was one guy doing all the instruments, but it was really good. It was really solid, and it really got the spirit of the song.
I think that's the same one. Yeah, that's the
Does
same
that
one.
one have
And
the bridge in
it's
it?
so yes,
Yeah.
it's
There's
so
a Ja-
well
there's
done
a
that you
Jamaican
actually.
version.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to talk about the Jamaican version?
I don't know who sent that.
That was me. I sent it was like the day before it came Now and Then came out, and it was like a YouTube video that said like leaked 100% real version of Now and Then. And it was just
Sam
like
did post it in the group chat, and I'm just like, oh wow, this really is the song.
You're gonna
Listen
need to send
it.
this to me.
It
I
was
need to
like
hear
a-
a dub. I need to hear a dub version.
it was
of
like
Now
that
and Then.
dub. That's what
AI
it was.
John Lennon. I forgot what he was doing, but yeah, that was
So
funny.
what drums did Ringo use on Now and Then? Was it the Ludwig?
There's a cool story I saw online about the drums. There was a guy who sold the drums to Ringo, and now he's seeing the drum set that he sold to Ringo. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah,
Imagine,
I think it was Don Bennett. Is that who it was? Because I think it was.
I thought that Don Bennett was in the picture. It's funny you say that. But I don't think he was the guy. He was like in the middle. The guy who on the left, I think, was the guy who actually sold the kit.
Gotcha.
So maybe Don Bennett hooked him up somehow and got a percentage.
But
I don't
what
know.
is it,
But
is it a Ludwig, like an old one, or?
I don't
It's like
think it was a Ludwig.
WFL, I think.
It's whatever he's using now. It looks like his garage studio. He just went to his garage in his sweats, then did it in 5 minutes.
His rock and roll
Yeah.
tracksuit.
It looks like a late '60s Ludwig to me.
I think it might even be earlier. I think it might be a 50s kit.
50s. Oh, that is
Yeah.
true because the 50s they come in the WFL or whatever.
yeah, the William F. That's right. Right. Yeah. And I think it did have the WFL tag on it. I don't know how I know that, but
Also, not to mention, Paul used Ringo's first or second Ludwig kit on the first
Right.
McCartney album.
The
Yeah,
65.
That's true.
The one that he used on Ed Sullivan, the first appearance. I
I
think.
think the snare was the 64. I forgot where I read this, but the kit that he used the least was the 65, I think. Except he toured with that, and then when they weren't touring, and McCartney took something, he took the 64 snare because Ringo wasn't using that, and he took the 65 kit, I think it was, that he used for McCartney.
I think McCartney had the 20-inch bass drum, though. I always
was
thought
the
it was the
downbeat,
first Ludwig
wasn't it?
set that they got, the first Black Oyster Pearl.
It'd be interesting to find out. I didn't think it was the 63. I didn't think it was that one, and that would be the only one with the 20-inch kit, the 20-inch kick.
Because Ringo had 2 downbeats, right?
Yeah. Did he? I think he might have. And one was the 64, maybe? And that's what it was. Maybe it was the 64, because I know the snare was a 64.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was the second downbeat kit that he toured with or something.
I guess we're off topic.
Oh, yeah.
That was used on With the Beatles on the second album, or
So
Damn, you've
so with
opened up
the
a can of worms.
Yeah. So with
Damn
the
it, Sam.
I think that was anything that was beyond the 63
Boy.
before went to the Super Classic was just for touring. So
So Ringo had one 20-inch kit, right? The entire tenure of the Beatles. It was when the 64 American tour started.
He
He
had
got the
2, I
22.
think, because I think the story I heard So he got the second downbeat kit for the Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
And then they came back, and then that
That's
was like
it.
right
You're
when
right.
they started
Yeah.
filming
Because
Hard Day's Night.
That's it. Yeah, so
Because
I
they
think
had the
Paul
one
had
with the
first
wrong
set.
finish at
Right.
first.
And he didn't travel overseas in the plane with the full drum kit. He brought the snare and the cymbals.
Right.
He brought the kit
Provided
back,
the new
though.
20-inch.
And
Yeah,
they
so
got-
he got it too. Yeah.
They got the kid from Manny's in New York.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I think it's the first one that Paul has on McCartney, the first 20-inch kit. I will go to the. I will battle.
Manny's, the whole Manny's thing.
Isn't
What?
that the one where they were in such a rush that they mounted the tom upside down? Because they
Was it?
the Swivomatic tom
Yeah.
mount. Because I know Gary Astridge, Ringo's drum curator, he brought a replica of the Ed Sullivan kit to one of the Beatle fests I went to, and the tom was mounted upside down.
All right, nobody likes Ringo here. Let's move on.
No, actually,
Wow.
just to comment once a little bit on the drums on Now and Then. I actually think Perry might have a great point that it's the vintage kit. In my, not to plug my own video, in my own cover I'm using my 1969 Super Classic kit, and the tom sounds are almost identical. So I actually think there may be a valid point there. And his fills, perfect Ringo fills. He's got the swing. No two are alike. Snare sounds awesome. Even the little rim shots sound thick and clear. I think it might be a classic Ringo performance and a classic McCartney bass line in 10, 20 years.
Absolutely.
Except the drums are recorded differently because you can actually hear them better.
Yes,
Yeah.
Beatles,
they sound much better. Yep.
it would be on the left side, and it would be, really compressed and real small. Whereas here, the drums are much bigger.
And are we sure that Paul used, it was a lap steel, right? A Rickenbacker lap steel for
I'm
the
pretty sure it was
the
a lap.
solo?
I read it was a lap steel. Yeah.
Do we know
It
anything
sounds like
about
one.
that? I heard there was something like Johnny Depp gave Paul like a cigar box like slide guitar that he uses live sometimes. So I don't know if that was the same thing.
Well, he had the cigar box thing when he played with the remaining members of Nirvana. So it could be that.
I think,
There's a way
Sam,
to find out.
you definitely got the better tone, though. He should have used his
I was
casino.
saying, George would be rolling in his grave listening to that. My
You should
God,
have asked
that
me
was
to,
horrible, man. It really was. No, I'm not lying. I mean, it really was. That is just not a strong solo. I just listened to the song just before we came on, just to refresh myself, and I was just thinking to myself, like, wow, this is horrible. Like, it's a three. Again, we
It's
go
the
back to
melody.
that guy that George Harrison was making fun of in that interview, Sam. He's like, oh, he just plays one note solos. That's all he knows how to do. What's that guy's name?
Neil
Man, I
Young.
keep forgetting. Huh?
Neil Young.
Neil Young.
Neil Young, yeah. I mean, that was a Neil Young move and a half right there.
Sounds like
Yeah.
Neil Young. I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, it's not even the melody; it's the technique. He's
Paul used the 62 Casino solo.
You think it was Casino?
You
for the
think it
solo?
was?
No, I think he should have used his Casino.
You should have
Yeah, he
Oh,
should have.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Seconded.
was just glad to see it sitting there. I don't know about you guys in the video. I was just glad to see the casino still there because there was that whole deal with McCartney 3 where he had the Gibson one. And I feel like it kind of implied, like, yeah, the Epiphone's getting old. So at first I was like, oh, God, did it fall apart? But seeing it there, I was like, okay.
He was
okay.
touring with it for a while too. The
Yeah.
Epi. Yeah.
Oh, the ES330.
Yeah, the Gibson
Yeah.
330. Yeah.
Yeah, basically just like the relative to the Casino, the Gibson.
Yeah. The Gibson version.
Yeah.
I really did like though that Paul added kind of a bridge, like regardless of the technicality of the solo. Like I thought it was really cool that it went to D minor and then at the end, the very end of the song, like the syncopated strings and drums. Like I thought that was my favorite part because it felt like hearing something new for someone who, you know, like you guys, we've heard the John demo. It could have been stale just to hear. I don't know.
Too tamed. It was too tamed.
I
You know,
think
from some people that are so innovative, you know, it was just too tamed to me. You know, that he could have done just a little bit more. He could have added.
if you listen to the slide in the context of the strings, if you think of them as one instrument, I think you'll appreciate the simplicity a bit more. The slide and the strings interplay a little bit to crescendo, to build. That's one of the things I've uncovered studying the song. I think it sounds simple but majestic. That's my opinion.
Can anybody but Sam and Mike actually hum the solo? No, I mean, is it that memorable? You know, because the good solos are the ones you can hum and you know how they go, right? I can't. I can't even tell you how it starts.
Yeah, it's just the melody,
But
really. Isn't it?
exactly, and I was just gonna say it is a strong melody, though. Even though it's not the
Yeah.
best melody I've ever heard. It is strong.
I was gonna say, just to point out, Paul did do a slide solo before George.
Drive my car.
Drive my
Yeah,
car.
Drive
Oh
My
yeah,
Car.
yeah.
On the
Oh,
casino.
and it's kind of just like Drive My Car. You got a few notes in there, and that's about it.
Wait, Ryan, is there a slide on this boy?
Ooh.
Oh boy.
No.
No, it's just
The outro. Listen to the
Just
outro.
that, yeah.
Awkward.
No.
I think that's
don't
just
think so.
Springer doing it, but we'll save that for
I-
another
yeah.
episode.
You sound
I mean-
pretty
Off
sure
topic.
about that,
Yeah,
dude.
off topic.
Let's just get
I'm
the same
gonna-
panel for that episode so that we can
give me a couple of months and I'll have a video on this boy. I think I can get it pretty close.
Well, rolling on to about an hour and a half. So it seems like all in all, the consensus is that most people seem to like the song. We all seem to like the video for the most part. There's things that, of course, could be better. And we're critiquing it just because we all know and really appreciate the music more than probably the average schmo Joe on the street. So we all think it could be better. But we all appreciate it, and this could be it. And,
I think-
it is what it is.
Those of us, especially the youngest ones of us are probably, glad to be a part of Beatles history in a sense because we missed out on the 95 stuff.
It does kind of make you wonder if you were alive in 1967 and I Am the Walrus came out. What would the reaction have been?
No, in
Like,
my
what
mind,
the fuck is this?
yeah.
Well, have
my
you
mind
guys-
kept going to that over and over?
I can speak to that, being somebody who was alive in '67. I was born in '64, just so you know. So the Beatles were a background to my whole childhood. Didn't even know they were the same band until I was 13. What I mean is, Sgt. Pepper versus She Loves You is so different, sounds like two different bands. And it wasn't until I was 12 or 13 that I realized it was the same band. And I loved all that music. I do remember when I was a kid hearing Strawberry Fields Forever. And it was that and Penny Lane, especially because I loved Penny Lane. But I remember it was magical. It was because there was nothing like it on the radio. Nothing. And even beyond that, it's interesting because that was recorded in '66. And even beyond that, when you go into like 1969, it sounds antiquated when you compare it to Strawberry Fields Forever. You hear things like When the Moon, Aquarius. And you've got these background vocals that are typical 1969, 70 background vocals. The Beatles sounded even fresher than the Future for a couple of years. And it was magical to hear that on the radio as a kid. Absolutely magical.
Yeah,
In real time.
Not to
In real
go in completely the opposite direction, but it is really interesting to compare that view now to if you watch the American Bandstand episode where they show the Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields videos and they get audience reactions. A couple of people are like, "Wow, this is great," and a bunch of people are just focused on the mustaches and they're like, "They look old now."
Yeah.
But a bunch of people are like, "What are they doing? What's going on here?" But I mean, I guess if you lived in that time and you were a teenager at that time, it's got to just be at first jarring more than anything. But obviously, everyone seems to have grown to love it.
If I can
nice
throw
that
a bit
we're
of
getting
shameless, if I could throw a little bit of shameless self promotion in there, I've the whole scheme behind my podcast is I have people on to talk about their personal history with the Beatles, and there have been a few people on who said, once they went, psychedelic and Sgt. Pepper, I didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
lost me for a while.
It's funny.
That's
I've
one of my
actually
favorite things to do is look on Wikipedia and look up the reactions to these songs as they came out. I just saw one that when The Fool on the Hill came out, someone said it was the worst Beatles song that had been released. So we're getting some of that now. We get to experience the divisiveness of a new Beatles song, just like everyone did after they started to evolve. I think that's really cool.
It's super cool.
one interesting take I'm remembering now that you guys bring that up is Steven Spielberg talking about how he didn't like any Beatles music, and then he until the White Album came out. And he's like, oh, then they got good. It's like, that's an interesting spot to start with.
It was Wild Honey Pie
blues
that
rock
really changed it for him.
Oh, are we also going to glide over how Paul used his Hofner on this song?
Instead of the Rick.
We forgot to glide over that.
Well,
Instead of the Rick. Yeah.
I mean, it's just so fitting. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You just assume he's gonna use it anyways. What other bass is he gonna use? I mean,
Did he use
Didn't use it on
five
Free as a
string?
Bird. Yeah, right. Exactly.
How much of a power move would it have been if he cracked out that Epiphone Rivoli?
No, if he cracked out the Rick bass,
50 years later, yeah.
The Rick bass, that would have been something.
Dude would bring out the bass 6.
But he's not known for the Rick bass, unless he's a fan like we are. Everybody connects the Hofner with the Beatles. That's the iconic cover of the Beatles. So I think he did the right thing playing that bass.
Yeah, that was the first time I felt some real emotion about the project. I was excited about the song, but all the promotion about the last Beatles song started to get me. And then seeing the clip, the preview with Paul on the Hofner, I don't know what it did. Yeah, that's a Beatle. That's an 80-year-old Beatle trying to recreate the magic. Yeah, it really got to me. Yeah.
Well, also, it sounds great.
It sounds amazing.
You know what I mean? It sounds great on the track, so...
It is cool, though. I mean, it's Paul being a Beatle. He's playing a Beatles bass line. For the first time in 20, 30 years.
To look at this from a different perspective briefly, it's funny for me to think now, like can you imagine the Rolling Stones trying to do something like this? Like, I just can't see them ever doing something like that.
One of the great tweets I saw was, imagine if Ringo had been killed and they had to resurrect his demos, what that would have sounded like.
You got
Much
the
different.
No-No song.
I want to
Yeah.
We just get Don't Pass Me By Part 2 and 3.
Jesus Christ.
A couple of bongo demos out there.
What?
I think there are a couple of Ringo bongo demos out there.
Oh boy.
Hey, Bongo.
What are your
Ozzy.
bongos on the new Hard Day's Night mix? They're really
That was
loud.
cool. Super.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Yeah.
Perry, do you have those bongos anywhere near you? You have
I-
the original.
Grab
Yeah.
them.
Oh, he's gonna grab him.
Perry
Oh, so
has
that-
the greatest gear collection of
Ever.
anybody on the
Absolutely.
planet.
He's
We
got
just
not
he's
like
got a
6 guitars out of this book.
The actual guitars in the book, right?
Actual guitars in the book.
There they are.
There we go.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
The real deal.
Yeah, they're
That's
cool.
awesome.
So good.
So those are metal, right?
They are. They're aluminum,
Yeah.
and they're just, you can tune them up so quickly. Like, it was when I was doing my video, what's the first? And I Love Her. I listened to it, and then I was able to get right to the tuning because I'm using the same bongos. But it was so quick because of the Rototom thing.
Oh yeah.
so they've held up, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, these did. I got these from Gary Astridge, actually.
Are those
When
dates?
did you get them from Gary?
Month or two ago. Not that long ago.
I think I might have seen those bongos on display before.
Yeah, well, they're on display in my house now.
Do we know
Should we,
when those were made, Perry? Do we
No,
have?
obviously 60s or late 50s, but I don't know. I wouldn't know how to date it. Maybe it's possible on the. This is a. You know what? That's a good question because it is a WFL tag. So it's not a regular. So it's probably late 50s, early 60s.
That's cool.
Should we
Aluminum bongos.
formally end the episode real quick before we continue
Probably.
this part of the conversation?
Yeah. And on the Bongos.
So if anybody wants to drop off, they can.
This has been
So
a
we'll
blast.
end
I
it.
don't know about you guys, but getting to talk to Perry and finally meeting, Grant and Liam, and I've talked to Ethan before and Michael, but I mean, this
Well,
has
because
been
Sam and
fun.
I, we've worked on stuff together, but yeah,
Yeah.
we've never.
I know.
We
it's
should
so
call
cool.
this the Beatles Bunch and meet as a group from now on.
I'll start a group chat if you want. The Beatles bunch.
Good with me.
Well, everybody, thanks for watching. It was a pleasure having everybody on this episode. Hope you all enjoy. Please like and subscribe. And, of course, down in the bottom in the description, I'm sure Ryan, that does all our hard editing, will list everybody's YouTube channel in the description. So
And tell us if
Thanks
you
again,
want to
everybody.
see more episodes with the Beatle Bunch, as we've as we've named them.
Yes, please comment below. So have a great night, everybody.
See you in the next one.
Nice meeting you guys.
See you in the next one.